by the time Damian told me to get dressed for a public event, I already knew what it meant. It was done hiding me. Or worse, he was done pretending I mattered enough to hide. The dress waiting on my bed was dark green, sleek, expensive, and not mine. Another costume. Another reminder that in Damian Vale's world, even humiliation came tailored. He walked into the charity auction on his arm under a ceiling of gold light and camera flashes so bright they stung. The room noticed me before I took 3 steps. Whispers moved faster than music. Charles Bennett's daughter. Damian Vale's problem. Damian's weakness. He kept my spine straight anyway. If they wanted a spectacle, I would at least make them work for it. Then a woman in diamonds blocked my path with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Miss Bennett," she said, loud enough for the nearest circle to hear. "You clean up well for a bargaining chip." It flooded my face. He opened my mouth, but she was already leaning closer. "Tell me, is this what happens now? Powerful men collect the debts and keep the daughters." Laughter. Quiet. Cruel. The kind meant to sound polite. My nails bit into my palm. And then Damian's voice dropped through the room like a blade. "Careful." I did not raise it. I did not need to. Every head turned. I stepped beside me, close enough that the edge of his jacket brushed my arm, and fixed the woman with a stare that made her smile falter. "If you want to discuss debts," he said, "start with your husband's accounts. Not my guest." Guest. The word should not have mattered. Eat teeth. The woman stepped back at once, and the circle around us broke apart like it had never formed. My pulse would not settle. Neither would the look in Damian's eyes. For one reckless second, I thought he had chosen a side. Then the auctioneer called for attention, and Damian released me to walk toward the stage. The room quieted. Celeste stood near the front, flawless and expectant. Damian took the microphone and said, "Tonight also marks a new strategic partnership between the Vale and Merrow families." Applause hit first. My understanding hit second. Not my guest. Not my choice. Not my anything. Just a problem he had. Protected in public before solving in public too. He stood there under the lights, smiling because I refused to break in front of them, while only one question burned through me. If this was his idea of protection, what exactly was Damian Vale planning to do with me next? I waited until Damian took a call in his office before I made up my mind. That was the ugliest part. Not the fear. Not the risk. The fact that I still knew his patterns well enough to use them against him. After the auction, after the way he cut down that woman only to stand on a stage and tie himself to Celeste Merrow anyway, something inside me had gone cold. He was done being protected like a problem. Done standing where powerful people could move me around and call it strategy. So I used the one thing Damian had not taken from me yet. My memory. Lena answered on the first ring this time. "Aibi, where are you?" "I cannot stay here anymore," I whispered, already moving through the service hall with my coat in one hand. "I need you to help me find Noah." Silence. "Then, your brother?" "If my father is running, Noah could be alone. A is all I have left." That was not completely true. That was what scared me. 20 minutes later I slipped out through a staff entrance while one of Damian's men argued with a delivery driver in the front lobby. The city air hit hard and cold. Lena's car was waiting half a block down. He got in fast, heart slamming, and for one wild second it felt like freedom. Then I looked at her and knew something was wrong. Her smile was too tight. Her hands gripped the wheel too hard. "Lena." She swallowed. "Aibi, I think we are being followed." He twisted in my seat and saw the black SUV behind us. Then another turned at the next light. My blood ran cold. "Keep driving." "I am trying." The first SUV surged closer. Lena's breath broke. Mine did too. This was not escape. This was another trap, and I had walked straight into it. Then a third car cut across the intersection and stopped hard in front of us. The driver's door opened. Damian stepped out in a dark coat, fury written into every line of him. "Eh." Yanked my door open before I could move. Out. Damian, Lena did not do anything. That is exactly the problem. His hand locked around my wrist as his gaze swept the street behind us. You did. He jerked back, humiliated, furious, checking. I would rather die than keep living like your weakness. For the first time, something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Do not say that to me, he said. Not when you almost got your friend taken too. Damian took me straight back to the penthouse and locked me in the panic room. That was the first thing he did. Not chill. Not threaten. Look me behind a steel door with soft lighting, bottled water, and enough quiet to make me feel 14 again and powerless in all the worst ways. He spun on him the second the door sealed. Are you serious? My voice hit the walls and came back smaller. You think this is protection? Damian stood on the other side of the narrow room, broad shoulders rigid, fury cut down into something colder. I think you were 2 minutes away from disappearing. So you put me in a box instead. A box I control is better than a street I do not. That should have made me angrier. Eat teeth. Back underneath it, fear still shook in my bones. Lena's face. The cars. The way the whole city kept trying to close around me. He shoved both hands through my hair and forced myself to look at him. Then tell me the truth for once. Who is actually after me? It went still. For a second, I thought he would shut me out again. Then he said, 2 factions. My pulse kicked. One belongs to your father. One does not. He stared at him. No yes. Each word came flat. Precise. Charles Bennett is not only hiding from me. He is moving pieces. If you vanish into the wrong hands, he loses leverage. If you vanish into the other ones, we all lose more than that. My mouth went dry. My father would not send people after me. Damian's expression did not soften. Your father left you under chandeliers and flashbulbs, Aibi. Stop pretending he has lines he will not cross. The truth of that hit so hard I had to look away. He stepped closer, not enough to comfort, just enough to make the room feel tighter. I do not keep you here because I am kind. Then why? He shot back. Why me? I held my gaze for one long, brutal second. Because if you fall into their hands, everything burns. He swallowed. Everything, I said slowly, or you. For the first time since the street, something shifted in his face. Not softness. Not weakness. Something worse. Something human. But he did not answer. He only turned toward the locked door and said, get some rest. Temaru, you are going to help me find your brother. Noah's words followed me all the way back to the visitor parking lot. He killed Mom. They stayed in my head like a wound with a voice. He wanted Damian to deny it. I wanted him to snap, to defend himself, to say anything that made the world feel less broken. Instead, he opened the car door and said, get in. That coldness should have made me hate him again. It almost worked. Then Noah climbed in after me, shaking so hard his blazer buttons clicked against the seat belt. He forgot Damian for 1 second and turned to my brother. Noah, look at me. His breathing was too fast. His hands would not stay still. He is here, he whispered. Dad said if he found me, it meant we were next. My chest tightened. No one is hurting you. But even as I said it, I saw Damian in the front seat, already on the phone, his voice clipped and deadly calm. Change the route. Pull the school footage from the last 48 hours. No. Noah flinched at every word. Then Damian looked back at him, and to my shock, his voice changed. Not warm. Not soft. But lower. Sapphire. Noah. Did you see anyone you recognized near campus? My brother swallowed. A man by the fence yesterday. Gray coat. He kept looking at the dorm. Damian nodded once, like Noah had just given him something valuable instead of fear. You did the right thing by remembering. He stared at him. So did Noah. It was the first time I had ever seen Damian speak to someone smaller than him without using fear as the first language. We did not go back to the school. We did not go back to the penthouse either. By the time we crossed into New York again, Damian had already moved Noah to a secure townhouse under another name, with private tutors, cameras, and 2 women on staff instead of armed men at every door. You planned all this that fast? He asked. Damian handed Noah a glass of water himself before answering. I planned it the second I realized Charles was hiding him in plain sight. Noah took the glass with both hands, still wary, but no longer looking at Damian like pure terror. He felt something shift in me then. Ismael. Dangerous. You did not have to do this, I said. Damian glanced at Noah, then at me. Children should not pay for their fathers' wars. The words hit harder than any explanation could have. For one stupid second, gratitude rose so fast it scared me. Damian, his phone lit up before I could finish. He looked at the screen, and every line of him locked back into place. Celeste, he said. And just like that, the room went cold again. I lied to Damian the second I walked back into the penthouse. That was new. Until then, most of my mistakes had come from fear, anger, greed. These one came with intent. Where were you? He asked without looking up from the files spread across his desk. His voice was calm. Todo calm. He slipped off my coat and forced my pulse to slow. In the guest room. He could not sleep. The lie tasted thin the second it left my mouth. Damian's eyes lifted at last. Sharp. Quiet. Maturing. For one terrible second, I thought he knew. Then you only said, next time, tell security before you start wandering. Wandering. If he had any idea I had been standing in front of Charles Bennett while my whole life tilted again, he hid it well. That should have relieved me. Instead, guilt sat under my ribs like a stone. It got worse the next afternoon when I used the key my father gave me. Damian had left for a council meeting. His men were posted downstairs. The penthouse was too still. He stood outside his private office with my hand trembling over the lock, then pushed the key in before I could lose my nerve. It fit. Of course it fit. The room smelled like leather, cedar, and control. Clean desk. Black cabinets. One safe behind a framed map of the city. He searched. Drawers first, expecting cash, weapons, layers, something that proved Damian had been lying all along. Instead I found medical files. Old ones. My mother's name across the top. Evelyn Bennett. My breath caught so hard it hurt. He flipped through pages with shaking hands. Treatment dates. Private consultations. Notice from years ago, too many pages. So much I did not understand. The ledger forgotten for one stupid second while my dead mother's life opened in my hands. Enjoying yourself? He spun so fast the folder nearly slipped. Damian stood in the doorway, still in his coat, one hand on the frame, expression carved from ice. My heart crashed against my ribs. I can explain. Can you? He shut the door behind him with one quiet click. Because from where I am standing, it looks like you were searching my office. He lifted the file like a shield. Why do you have records on my mother? His face changed, but only for a second. Then the wall came back down. That is not an answer. Rage flared hot enough to burn through my fear. Maybe I stopped believing your answers. I stepped closer. Not fast. Not threatening. Worse. Control. And maybe, he said, you never stopped belonging to the people who use you. The words hit like a slap. He stared at him, hurt and furious, while the file on my mother shook in my hands and one truth pounded louder than the rest. Whatever was hidden in this room, it was not just about Damian anymore. The morning after Damian caught me in his office, the penthouse felt different. Not louder. Worse. Quieter. Like the air itself knew I had crossed a line and had not decided yet how much it would cost me. Damian barely spoke at breakfast. I read messages. Took one call. Never once mentioned my mother's file. That silence was more punishing than anger. By noon, I needed air badly enough to ask for the terrace. One guard followed me out and stayed 5 feet back like a reminder. He gripped the cold iron railing and stared down at the city until a voice behind me said, "You look like someone running out of places to stand." He turned so fast my pulse jumped. The man by the terrace door was in his 30s, clean-cut, expensive coat. Government confidence written all over him. Not one of Damian's men. "Who are you?" He held up a card, but not close enough for me to read more than a name. Ethan Cole. Assistant US Attorney, he said. "And before you panic, I am not here to arrest you." My throat tightened anyway. "Then why are you here?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because both Charles Bennett and Damian Vale are playing the same old game with newer suits, and you are stuck in the middle of it." It rose in my face. "You do not know anything about me." "I know enough." His gaze sharpened. "Enough to know your mother died trying to get away from one system and that you are about to get buried in two." The words hit too close. He hated that. He hated him for sounding calm when my whole life felt raked. He slid a thin white envelope onto the terrace table. Witness protection. Immunity discussion. A real exit, IED. He stared at it without touching it. "You want me to betray my father and Damian." I did not blink. "I want you to survive them both." The terrace door opened behind me before I could answer. Damian stepped out and stopped cold when he saw Ethan. The space between the three of us locked tight in a second. Ethan's mouth tilted. "You really do collect complicated women, Vale." Damian's voice went flat enough to freeze the air. "Get off my property." Ethan did not move. It only looked at me and said, "Keep the envelope." When men like them start calling you a liability, they stop seeing you as human. Then he walked out, leaving the papers on the table and a new kind of fear inside my chest, because for the first time since Damian took me, someone had offered me a door that looked almost like freedom. The ballroom was all gold light and polished lies, but the ride home was worse. Damian put me in the lead SUV with 2 of his men while he stayed behind to finish whatever kings and predators discussed after midnight. Fine. Let him. He sat in the back seat with my hands clenched in my lap and Ethan's stare still burning in the back of my mind. The city outside blurred into wet glass and red tail lights. Then blue lights flashed. Bem doce. Sarp. Sadin. Todo close. One of Damian's men in the front seat went still. "That is not our route." The driver slowed anyway. My pulse jumped. "What is wrong?" Neither man answered. The SUV rolled to the curb. Another dark vehicle cut in front of us. The rear door locks clicked. My whole body went cold. "Those are not cops," the man in the passenger seat said into his radio. Everything moved at once after that. Doors. Shouts. Tires. The driver tried to reverse, but another SUV boxed us in from behind. He grabbed the panic button in my coat pocket so hard it hurt and hit it without thinking. "Get down," someone snapped. He ducked just as the side window cracked under a hard impact from outside. "Not cheddar. Not enough. Just enough to make me understand this was real." My breathing turned jagged. He could not see faces clearly through the rain and glass, only shapes moving too fast and too close. Then one of the rear doors was yanked open, and cold air slammed into the car. A hand reached in not Damian's. "Brown Chan. Brown watch. Brown boys. Miss Bennett, come with us." Terror hit clean and hard. He kicked backward and twisted away so fast my shoulder slammed the seat. Then another voice cut through the chaos. Low. Furious. Familiar. Touch her again and lose the arm. Damian. It was there before I could even process how. Dark coat soaked with rain, expression carved from rage, one hand braced on the open door as his men flooded the street around us. The man reaching for me vanished backward. Damian leaned in, eyes scanning my face, my hands, the broken edge of the window. "Are you hurt?" He shook my head, too shaken to speak. He exhaled once, sharp and rough, like he had been holding his breath since the first red light. Then he looked over his shoulder and gave orders so fast I could not follow half of them. No hesitation. No caution. No distance. Just me first. Me, before the plan. Me, before himself. When he finally turned back, his hand closed around mine for 1 second too long. You are safe, he said. But the way he said it was the real danger, because for the first time, Damian Vale sounded like he needed that to be true as much as I did. Damian did not let go of my hand until we were back inside the penthouse. Even then, the imprint of it stayed with me. His people swept every room. Phones rang. Orders snapped through earpieces. The whole place moved like a machine under stress, but I stood in the middle of it all with rain still drying on my coat and one thought repeating louder than the rest. It came from me himself. Not the guard. Not the command. An hour later, I was in his office again, only this time the door was open and the truth was already waiting on the desk. My mother's file. The same one I had touched before. Damian set it in front of me without a word. He looked up. Why now? His face was tired in a way I had never seen. Because after tonight, you do not get to keep believing the wrong story. My fingers shook as I opened the folder. There were letters. Medical notice. Foundation records. Photographs. My mother, Evelyn, standing beside another woman I recognized from old society pages as Damian's mother. Smiling. Working. Trusting. They knew each other, I whispered. More than that, Damian said. They were trying to move money away from Charles. Quietly. To protect witnesses before he found them. The room tilted. He kept reading. My mother had not been a sheltered wife. She had been building a case. She had been helping. She had tried to get out. The car accident, I said, barely hearing my own voice. It was not random. Damian's jaw tightened. I knew pieces. Not enough in time. His eyes held mine then, and for once there was no shield in them. My mother tried to help yours disappear. She failed. Grief hit me fresh and brutal, not because my mother was gone, but because she had been braver than anyone ever told me. Braver than my father. Braver than me. He stared at the photo again, at two women who had tried to stop a fire men like Charles kept feeding. Noah said you killed her. Damian's voice dropped. Charles wanted you to believe that. I pressed the heel of my hand against my mouth, trying not to break apart in front of him. So my father lied about her. About you. About everything. Yes. The word was quiet. Final. He showed. Abby stepped back. Instead I sat there, holding the proof that my whole childhood had been built on a lie, while the man I had kept calling dangerous was the only one handing me the truth. Then my eyes caught a line buried in the last page. Whitney's list pending transfer. Location unknown. He looked up again, pulse spiking for a whole new reason. Damian, I said. If my mother hid the witness list before she died, where is it now? I do not know, Damian said, and that answer should have frustrated me. Instead, it made him feel more honest than anyone else left in my life. We were still in his office, my mother's file spread open between us like a wound that had finally stopped pretending to be a scar. He looked at the pages, then at him. Why did you not tell me any of this sooner? His jaw tightened. Because truth sounds a lot like manipulation when it comes from a man like me. He had no answer for that. The worst part was, he was right. If he had told me on the first night that my mother worked with his family, I would have called it another lie. So instead, he had waited. Protected me. Let me hate him. He sat down on the edge of the leather sofa by the window because my knees suddenly felt unsteady. Damian stayed where he was for a second, then crossed the room and placed a stack of old letters beside me. These were in the box with your mother's things, he said. I never opened them. He looked up sharply. You could have. I could have done a lot of things. The room went quiet after that. Not empty. Just full in a different way. I opened the first letter and found my mother's handwriting, quick and elegant, full of coded names and quiet courage. Damian sat in the chair across from me, close enough to matter, far enough not to crowd my grief. We read in silence for a while, two children of dangerous families trying to piece together what the dead had tried to save. At some point, my hand started shaking again. Not from fear. From the weight of finally seeing my mother clearly. Damian noticed. Of course he did. He leaned forward, slow enough to let me pull away if he wanted. He did not. His fingers stopped just short of my face, hovering near the tear I had not realized had fallen. The air between us changed. Sharpened. Softened. Both at once. He could hear my own breathing. So could he. For one suspended second, it felt like the whole brutal world outside his office had gone silent just to watch what we would do next. Then Damian pulled his hand back first, like touching me would cost him more than he could afford. He swallowed hard and hated how much that hurt. So I did the reckless thing instead. He shifted closer. Not a confession. Not a kiss. Just enough to say I was still there. His eyes lifted to mine, darker than before, and whatever passed between us was real enough to frighten me. Which was probably why the first thing I said was, "This does not change what you are." Damian's mouth moved once, almost sad. "No," he said quietly. "But it changes what you know." I left the penthouse through the service elevator just after midnight, wearing a dark coat, flat shoes, and the kind of pride that feels brave right up until it gets you killed. Ethan's location led me to a quiet underground garage in Tribeca, all concrete pillars and buzzing fluorescent lights. It was waiting beside a black sedan with two men in plain clothes. No badges. No marked car, my pulse kicked anyway. "This is witness protection?" he asked. Ethan gave me a tight smile. This is how people stay alive when powerful men are hunting them. He should have listened to the part of me that recoiled. Instead I stepped closer. "And after tonight?" Ethan opened the rear door. "After tonight, you tell me where the witness list is, and I make sure neither Damian nor your father ever touches you again." They cold went through me in one clean line. "The list?" I did not blink. "Do not look so surprised. Your mother died over it. Damian is protecting you because he thinks you can lead him to it. Charles wants it for the same reason. I am just honest enough to say it out loud." He took one step back. "Ten anoter. You never wanted me. You wanted what I know." Ethan's voice sharpened. "I want leverage over men who bury everything they touch. Get in there. Car, Ivy." One of his men moved first. That was enough. My hand dove into my coat pocket and found the panic button Damian had given me at the lake. He pressed it so hard my thumb hurt. Ethan saw it too late. "What did you just do?" My breath shook, but my voice did not. "I chose the man who at least lies to keep me alive." The garage exploded into motion after that. Tita screamed from the ramp above. Door slammed. Ethan's men turned as headlights cut across the concrete. Damian's SUV stopped hard enough to echo. It was out before it fully settled, coat open, eyes lethal. "Step away from her." Ethan let out a humorless laugh. "Interesting. She called you." Damian did not take his eyes off me. "Come here, Ivy." That should not have undone me. "Eat teeth." He crossed the distance fast, pulse pounding, and stopped close enough to smell rain on his coat. "I did not betray you," I said, hating how much that mattered. Something rough flickered across his face before he buried it. Ethan backed toward his car, smiling like this was not over. "You just delayed the question, Ivy. You still have to decide who gets the list." But I did decide one thing in that garage, and it was the only truth that mattered when Damian's hand closed around mine and held on. When the trap finally snapped shut, the person I called was him. Damian did not speak to me on the drive back from the garage. His hand had left mine, but the memory of it still burned. Now he sat across from me in the SUV, jaw tight, phone in one hand, giving orders so fast and low I could barely track half the names. One name kept repeating. Adrian. By the time we reached the penthouse, the whole place felt wrong. Todo estil. Todo prepared. Damian did not take me upstairs. It led me through a private corridor I had never seen before and stopped outside a glass-walled conference room overlooking the lower security floor. "Stay here," he said. "And this time, listen." Before I could answer, two of his men shoved Adrian Cross into the room. He knew Adrian. Everyone in Damian's circle knew him. Quiet. Loyal. Always 3 steps behind Damian with a file or a warning or a solution. Seeing him forced into a chair made my stomach turn. Damian walked in last and closed the door behind him. No shouting. No drama. Used a silence so sharp it made my skin prickle. Adrian looked up and gave a crooked little smile. "So this is how we end." Damian stayed standing. "You sold her route. You sold the safe house. You sold my internal movements." Adrian's smile faded. "I sold your future before you burned it down yourself." My pulse kicked hard. He stepped closer to the glass without meaning to. Adrian laughed once. "Bitter." The council was already wavering. "Then you started moving for her instead of the board." Charles Bennett saw it. So did Victor Mero. They made an offer. My blood went cold. Victor Marrow. Celeste's uncle. Damian did not react. That was the terrifying part. It just stood there, still as winter, while Adrian kept talking. "She was never just bait," Adrian said. "She was the test. We needed to know if the great Damian Vale would choose power or the enemy's daughter." My throat tightened. So that was it. Not only a trap. A measurement. A crack in the throne with my face on it. Damian finally spoke, and his voice was so flat it frightened me more than anger would have. "And what did you learn?" Adrian looked straight at him. "That you were already lost." Something in the room shifted. Final. He saw it in Damian's posture. In the way every other man went still. And for the first time, I understood how cold he could become when he stopped being the man who watched storms from outside my door and became exactly what the city feared. Then Adrian leaned back and delivered the one sentence that shattered everything else. "None of this matters now anyway. Charles already has Noah." Noah. The name hit harder than any threat in that glass room. He did not wait for Damian to dismiss anyone. He turned and ran. By the time he caught up with me in the private hall, my phone was already ringing from an unknown number. He knew before I answered. "Dad." My voice came out thin and sharp. Charles Bennett sounded calm. "Of course he did. If you want your brother back, Ivy, you are going to stop letting other people think for you." He pressed myself against the wall. Because my knees suddenly felt unreliable. "Put Noah on the phone." Arrustly. Then Noah's voice, shaky and small. "Ivy." Relief and terror crashed together so hard I almost choked on them. "I am here." "Are you hurt?" Before he could answer, Charles took the phone back. "Bring me the witness list, and the boy goes free." Damian stopped 2 feet away, reading my face before I said a word. "What does he want?" He should have lied. He could not. "The list." The word barely made it out. Damian went completely still. Not angry. Not surprised. Worse. Devastated in a way he would never let anyone else see. He held out his hand for the phone. Charles was already gone. He stared at the dead screen, then at Damian. "Tell me where it is." No, his answer landed like a door slamming shut. "Noah dies if I do nothing. Noah dies if Charles gets that list too." He hated him for being right. He hated him more because he sounded like a man choosing between 2 impossible graves. Hours later, after his people tore through leads and routes and burner numbers, I stood outside his office and watched him unlock the wall safe himself. It pulled out a slim black drive and a sealed packet of documents. The real witness list. My mother's last insurance. My brother's possible ransom. My whole body went cold. Damian looked at me over the edge of the folder, eyes exhausted and raw and still trying not to soften. "If this leaves my hands the wrong way, everything collapses," he said. "Your father included." He nodded like I understood. Maybe part of me did. But later, when the penthouse finally went quiet and Ma's frightened voice started echoing in my head again, I used the code I had seen reflected in the safe glass. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the drive. The vault clicked open. He took the list. And when I turned, Damian was standing in the doorway, looking at me like I had just chosen the one betrayal he could not survive. He did not shout. He did not stop me. He only said, very quietly, "So this is who you chose." Damian stepped onto the terrace like the storm had finally found its shape. Dark coat. Empty hands. Eyes locked on Charles Bennett as if the years between them had never really passed. He stood between them with my brother already halfway to the car and my father still reaching for an envelope I had no intention of giving him. "You came alone," Charles said, almost amused. Damian stopped 3 yards away. "No, I came after her." The words hit first. Then the silence after them. Charles laughed softly. "There it is. The flow. He should have been afraid. He was. But something steadier had started to rise under the fear. "No more games," I said. "Noah is out. This ends now." Charles' gaze cut to me, colder than the lake behind him. "You still think endings are that simple?" It turned back to Damian. "Tell her why her mother died believing help was coming." My pulse stumbled. Damian did not move. Charles smiled without warmth. "Go on. Tell your favorite weakness. What happened the last time our family stood at a line like this?" He looked at Damian, and for one brutal second, he let me see it. The guilt. The old wound. "My mother asked me to spare him," Damian said quietly. "She believed Evelyn still had a chance to get out if Charles disappeared instead of died." The world tilted under my feet. Charles spread his hands. "And while he showed mercy, your mother stayed exposed." Pain flashed through me so hard I nearly folded under it. He turned to Damian. "You let him walk?" He held my gaze and did not defend himself. "Yes." That honesty hurt more than any lie. But when I looked back at Charles, all I saw was a man who had taken one spared chance and turned it into a lifetime of ruin. One terrible choice was not the same as a life built on terrible choices. My hand tightened on the drive in my pocket. "You both wanted the list," I said. "So here is the truth. Neither of you gets to own it." Charles' face changed first. Then Damian's. He pulled out my phone, opened the timed message I had sent an hour ago, and hit send. The real files went to a federal dead drop with instructions my mother would have approved of enough to break the network. And now to protect names she died trying to save. Charles lunged toward me too late. Damian stepped between us just as my phone chimed with the only proof I needed. "Delivery confirmed." I looked at my father over Damian's shoulder and felt the last of my fear burn away. "You taught me love was leverage," I said. "My mother taught me better." The fallout began before we even left the estate. Damian's phone would not stop ringing. Neither would mine. Alerts lit up my screen one after another. Federal seizures. Frozen accounts. Emergency warrants. Leaked ledgers tying Charles Bennett to shell companies, witness intimidation, and half the polished charities he used to wash his name clean. The network my father spent years building was collapsing in real time, and the worst part was this: Damian did not look victorious. It looked like a man watching a controlled fire spread into rooms he had once convinced himself he could keep separate. By the time we got Noah back to the city, the first arrests had already started. Lena was moved to a safe apartment under Damian's orders before I even asked. Noah was placed with a private security team and a trauma counselor before sunrise. Damian handled it all with that same terrifying efficiency, but now I could see the cost. Men in his own circle were calling with damage reports. Allies were vanishing. All the counts tied to the Vale machine were being flagged too. I had known this would hit him. I had chosen not to stop it anyway. "You did this on purpose," I said quietly when I found him alone in the penthouse office, jacket off, tie gone, sleeves rolled up, looking more exhausted than I had ever seen him. I did not deny it. "I could have buried parts of it," he said. "I did not." "Why?" His has lifted to mine. Because your mother was right. This only ends if someone lets it end. The answer hit somewhere deep and bruised. Before I could say anything else, his phone rang again. He glanced at the screen and exhaled once, sharp and humorless. Victor Mero. I answered on speaker by accident or by intent, I could not tell. Victor's voice came through like acid. You chose that girl over the order that made you. Celeste is done with this arrangement. So are we. Damian disconnected without a word. No anger. No defense. Just the final cut of another old alliance. Falling away. An hour later, he walked me downstairs himself. No guards too close. No commands. Just the city waiting beyond the glass doors. My chest tightened. Where are we going? Damian held the passenger door open and did not meet my eyes. You are not. I am sending you somewhere safe. He stared at him. And then what? His expression did not crack, which somehow made it worse. Then this ends with me. I closed the door before I could stop him, and as the car pulled away, I looked back through the rear window and saw him standing alone on the curb, like he had not just saved my life again. Like he had finally decided I would survive better without him. Weeks later, the city still would not stop talking about the fall of Charles Bennett and the empire that burned with him. But the noise felt far away now. No, I was safe. Lena was laughing again. The worst men in my life were no longer deciding where I stood, what I knew, or who I had to become to survive. For the first time in years, I could breathe without waiting for the next lie to find me. That was the strange part. Peace did not arrive like triumph. It arrived quietly, in small rooms, in morning light, in the absence of fear. When Damian asked to see me, he did not send a car. He did not send guards. He just sent one message. Your choice. He found him on the terrace of a restored old hotel downtown, the skyline bright behind him, the city at his back instead of under his fist. He looked different. Still powerful. Still dangerous. But cleaner somehow. Like a man who had finally stopped mistaking control for salvation. He did not step toward me. He let me close the distance or keep it. The old network is done, he said. What is left is being moved into legal hands. Smaller. Cleaner. No shadows you did not choose. He searched his face for the trap that used to hide inside every offer. He found none. And me? He asked. His eyes locked on mine. No caje. No protection contract. No claim. Just truth. My pulse kicked once, hard and clear. Then tell it. Damian exhaled, and for the first time since the gala, there was no wall in it. I loved you long before it was safe. He just did not know how to love anything without turning it into something I could guard. The words landed deep. Not because they were perfect. Because they were earned. He stepped closer until the old distance between us finally ran out. Then learn something new, I said. Because I am not staying out of fear. I am staying because I choose you. Something in his expression softened all the way then. Not into weakness. Into relief. Into wonder. Into the kind of devotion that no longer needed to hide behind power. It touched my face like it was the first honest thing he had ever been given. Below us, the city kept moving. Cold. Loud. Ruthless. But when I stepped fully into his space, I was not the hostage from the gala anymore. He was not the daughter my father used, and I was not the weakness men whispered about like a flaw. He was the woman who walked back by choice. The enemy's daughter, maybe. But also the only weakness Damian Vale would never regret.